Hi, welcome to Reconciliation in Romans. This is week 3. We are about halfway through our 5-week intensive term, and I am really pleased with the way things are going. The reading and the forum discussion shows me that, and the assignments are showing me that you're processing what we're learning through the lecture and the reading, and may not be agreeing with everything, but you're giving it some thought and some time and letting it become part of your own story. And I appreciate that about you, so thank you. Now this week I want to tell you a story that is not my story, but the story of a very dear friend. And I find it more difficult to tell than my own story because of how deeply I love this friend. So we're going to engage with her story in our forum discussions this week, and I thank you in advance for being caring and loving and thoughtful as you engage with her story and answer some pretty difficult questions about what you would do in her circumstances. So my friend's name is Casey. She is in her early 30s. She is engaged to be married. She works with underprivileged kids, and she lives at home with her dad, trying to save up money to buy her first house. When our friendship was new, Casey asked me about my work with human trafficking, and she asked me to define human trafficking, so I did. And she looked at me very solemnly and said, "Sarah, I think I'm a victim of human trafficking." And she told me her story, and I assured her, yes, you are a victim of human trafficking. So here's her story. Her parents divorced when she was very young. This was after her mom developed full-blown schizophrenia right after Casey was born. Her mom moved to Washington with Casey, and her dad lived in Arizona. And her mom was given money by her dad for child support, but she often misspent it on various vices. And Casey and her mom lived destitute in cars and hotels, and sometimes in rental homes or in other people's homes. Casey's mom wanted to be able to buy her nice things like chocolate milk and pretty dresses. So she devised a way of providing these things for her daughter by selling her to pedophiles. Casey would be gone for up to a week at a time. And these men would dress her up like dolls and brush her hair and tell her she was pretty, and then they would rape her. When Casey would get home, she'd call her dad crying, and her dad would weep over the phone and tell her, "Let's pray about it." Not, "I'm coming to get you," not, "I'm calling 911, but let's pray about it. Now, I believe in the power of prayer. I believe. But when there is a practical need that we can meet, sometimes we are that answer to prayer. Her dad failed her in this. So besides selling Casey, her mother would devise torturous ways to punish her for normal childhood things like not listening and being a little bit mouthy. Her mom would cut her. Her mom would smear dog poop on her. One time she made her drink Drano, and Casey had to have a tube placed in her esophagus to help her swallow and breathe properly because of the damaging effects of Drano. So she was missing from school for a week at a time when she was with pedophiles and predators. She was in and out of the hospital, and no one asked questions. Not teachers, not nurses and doctors and administrators. The police were never at her door. The justice system failed Casey, and social services failed Casey. She was a child left to the devices of a very sick mother. And by all rights, both of her parents should be in prison today for how she was treated. When Casey was 18, she left her mom to go to college. She became a Christian and became very involved in her church. And at first, Casey completely cut her mom out of her life. Her mom didn't even know where she lived. She didn't have her phone number. She was just completely absent. And this is I think, a normal reaction to what her childhood looked like. But Casey, in discovering her own faith, decided that if her mom was ever going to know Jesus, Casey wanted to be the one to show her what forgiveness and reconciliation could look like. So while in counseling and being mentored, she began to re-engage her mother. After college, Casey moved to Salem to be with her dad because she wanted reconciliation with him also. Like I said before, she lives with her dad and has for several years, and they're carving out a new life together. But when Casey brings up her childhood, her dad falls to pieces and weeps and says, I don't know how to fix this, and therefore he doesn't want to talk about it. This puts Casey in a difficult position because she's not sure how to reconcile with someone if they aren't willing to talk about it. There's forgiveness and there's reconciliation, and that's one of the things I want us to wrestle with this week. So, after Casey moved to Oregon, Casey's mom remarried. She married one of Casey's most prolific rapists, and Casey's mom knew exactly who that man was and what he did, and she still married him, likely for his money. But that put Casey in a very difficult position because she could no longer go visit her mom. Her mom had to come to Oregon to visit if she wanted to see Casey. Her mom has been suicidal on and off. She calls Casey when she is suicidal, and Casey is torn because she doesn't want her mom to commit suicide, but at the same time sometimes thinks to herself, my life would be easier if my mom were dead. That's something that she sometimes feels guilt over thinking, but it's a part of her story. Casey's mom and, let's call him stepdad, divorced a few years ago. And as their marriage crumbled, Casey's mom often blamed Casey for their crumbling marriage because it was evident that Casey's new stepfather still lusted after the little girl that Casey used to be. So her mom blamed Casey for this. They divorced a few years ago, and Casey's mom moved to Oregon to be near to Casey. And Casey would see her and let her come into her life when it was evident that her mom was having a good day. I have met Casey's mom several times. When I hang out with Casey, especially at their house, she'll just pop in and do some cleaning for them and do a quick visit and then head out. And at first I didn't know how I would react to such a woman. At first I thought I might react violently, but I discovered that wasn't the case, that this was a broken woman who needed the hope of Jesus. So I had compassion and pity towards her. Now, Casey is engaged to a man who is passionate about helping kids and women in domestic violence situations. When I met him recently, I asked him, how did you feel when you met her mom? And he told me he wanted to murder her until he actually met her. And then we discovered that we had the same reaction to her, that we saw that she was very sick, that what she had done was very wrong, but we were able to adopt Casey's understanding of the fact that as we each need reconciliation with Christ to have full relationship with God, so did this woman. She needs that too. Casey and her fiance want to have children, but she wants to wait as long as she can. Her mother is in very ill health, and she hopes that her mom dies before they're at a place to have children, because she doesn't want to have to explain why Casey's mom will never be allowed near their children. Her mom still doesn't take responsibility for her actions. Half the time she doesn't know what she did was wrong, and the other half of the time she puts the responsibility on Casey because Casey was a child and needed things. And to her mom, the justification is, you needed things, so I put us in a position to be able to get them. I provided for you. So this story is complicated because of her mother's illness, because of the sin of the men that were introduced to Casey's life, because of her father who failed her but is trying to have a relationship with her now in a healthy way, trying. When I met Casey's dad, I liked him. He's a nice man. He's generous. He's kind. We were having dinner with them one night, and Casey's dad came in. It was late, and he was going to go to bed, so he said, "Good night. I love you guys." And Mark and I responded with, "We love you too." And we were genuine. We loved this man. But as I walked away that evening and got in the car, I was torn. In a similar way that Casey is torn, because you can love someone and still be disgusted by their actions. That it's hard to explain, and it's hard to process, and I've been having to process that still years later, what that means to me. So I'm reminded of what Jesus said about forgiveness, and that we should forgive 7 times, 70 times. Which leads us to the question, how much is too much? Is there a point in your life where you just need to cut ties and say, I can't be around you anymore? I never want to be, I never will. Is reconciliation possible between Casey and her mom? Is it possible between Casey and her dad? One of her deepest friends was able to go to Casey's mom and visit them, and he stood as a protector between Casey and her mom and her mom's pedophile husband. He was physically there to make sure nothing happened to Casey. And all of us in Casey's life feel that way. We want to protect her and help her, but so much of her story is her doing the hard work herself. And she has needed to. Casey has shown me more about reconciliation. Besides my own relationship with Jesus, she has shown me more about reconciliation than anyone or anything in the world. And I am humbled by that. I'm humbled by the fact that I get to be a part of her story. And I'm very thankful that she gave me permission to share her story with you. Because, like I said, it causes us to ask difficult questions. So my hope is not just that you try and formulate an answer for these difficult questions to fulfill the assignment, but rather you would contemplate what reconciliation looks like in all avenues of your own life, what it could look like, what it should look like, and that this story would impact you in a similar way that it has impacted me, and will cause us to see what God's reconciliation can look like. I love you guys. I pray for you. I'm open to your questions and comments and your concerns. And as you wrestle with this, if you don't want to wrestle with it in the forums yet, feel free to shoot me an email or call me and we can talk more about it. But I'm here to serve you. So I will see you in the forums soon. I look forward to reading them and to reading your assignments. Many blessings.